You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Los Angeles, what's happening? Welcome back to the LA Football Show. If you are on radio, thank you for tuning in, making us a part of your drive on the Mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. This is the LA Football Show. You can always find us on the LA Football Network, LAFBnetwork.com. We are everywhere you get your podcast. Just look for Believe in LA Football or just type in LA Football Show. And on YouTube, LAFB Network, you can find us there in video platform. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud, joined as always by Jamal Madney. This is your Rams segment or your Rams show on podcast. And we are going to get into this game against the Cardinals, see if the Rams can keep their winning going against the Cardinals, but get the winning back this season as they sit at 3-5. Jamal, what's up, brother? How we doing? And are you looking forward to this game this week?
Doing well, Ryan. Excited to get into this one and talk about the battle of the Titans, the 3-5 Rams against the 3-6 Cardinals. It is Goliath versus Goliath in the battle for avoiding the cellar in the NFC West. So excited to jump into it.
Yes, Rams are currently a 1.5-point favorite in this game, according to our friends at BetOnline. Make sure to go to betonline.ag, use the promo code BELIEVE for a 50% welcome bonus. So they are favored. You know, it's funny. I saw Jamal who was it on Twitter? Was it Ben Baldwin? Power rankings came out, and it was someone that's very analytical. It was, you know, they did his power rankings strictly based on analytics, and he had the Rams still ranked like 10th in the power rankings, which anyone with eyeballs knows that cannot be true. But I found it interesting. I'm like, oh, I mean, obviously it takes into account, I'm assuming, I didn't read, it was just like a graph that had it. But I'm assuming that takes into account, you know, strength of schedule, injury incorporation, variance of loss, yada, 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 yada. But I found that interesting. I'm like, yeah, this Rams team is not the 10th best team in football. Not a chance, right?
Ryan, they might not be the 10th best team in the NFC. So, yeah, it's hard for them to be the 10th best team in football. So, no, but, you know, I think it also speaks a little bit, Ryan, to how well the defense has played also over the course of this season. And Raheem Morris, much maligned always, but I think he's done an outstanding job this year and just keeping the Rams afloat in some of these games and giving the offense as many chances as the offense has had to turn games around to be able to make games competitive. So I think when you look at overall, I think play-to-play efficiency on the defensive side of the ball, when you take situations into account, when you take number of snaps, when you take into account kind of time of possession and having to be on the field so much, I can see an argument for the defense being very good this year. And the fact that Stafford's got 8 picks, but it's not like they're fumbling the ball all over the yard and making all kinds of mistakes left and right. So I think there's some analytical corners and crevices in the room where I can see some semblance of credibility to some of those models. But yeah, overall, this is not the 10th best team in football.
No. And I just found it because I want to make sure I'm not like making up information here. And I think it's actually based on, it was Ben Baldwin, market-derived team tiers. So it's betting market rankings. So that makes more sense.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
10th. Yeah, there. That makes a lot more sense. Because, he has the Jets, who I'm not necessarily in love with the Jets. I've impressed, but he has them at 25, which I was like, wow, how are you? That's 6-3 team at 25. So this makes more sense. So you can, anyone listening can forget what we said, or, you know, we were at least giving you some good analysis on it there. So, but tough loss against the Bucks, Jamal. Obviously, we got all into it last episode, talking about it, what that loss meant for this team, what it means for this team going forward. But looking forward, you know, you get an Arizona team that has looked just as bad, and they don't have the injuries that the Rams have. They are a talented squad on paper, on offense and defense. They have the exact same coaching staff pretty much. So it's interesting that a team that was just a playoff team a year ago is now 3-6 and looks just inept at almost every position, even with all the talent they have. What's been your take on the Cardinals? Is it as simple as too much talent in the wrong places, Or is it as simple as Cliff Kingsbury just is not an NFL coach and they're going to need to find a new coach before they're ever really competitive in this league?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, Ryan. I think they have enough talent to be very competitive on a year-over-year basis. When you look at who they have at wide receiver, a top 5 receiver, arguably the best receiver in football before he got hurt. There's an argument out there for that. Kyler Murray, very talented player. They've got talented running backs. They've got very, very explosive athletic players on the defensive line. And so there's enough there with the right coaching staff and the right approach. But I think time and again, Cliff Kingsbury has shown over the last 4 or 5 years that talent gets you these quick starts when other teams are still trying to find themselves and figure it out weeks 1 through 6 of the season. And then when there's enough film and teams are comfortable in their own skin and adjustments come into play and real coaching counter move comes into play, Kingsbury just falls apart. And that was sort of why it was surprising in the first place that he even got the Cardinals job, because he never really did all that much at Texas Tech. He was sort of a perennial 8-win kind of guy at Texas Tech, which is around where Texas Tech is supposed to be. There was always a joke in college that Steve Sarkisian was called 7-win Sark, and Cliff Kingsbury was just sort of that version just in Texas. So I think that it's really Kingsbury's the one that has to go. And you can clearly even see it last week in terms of the chemistry with this team on the sideline, the arguments that are taking place between Kyler Murray and Hopkins, Kyler Murray and his offensive line. You can see he has a lot of maturing to do as a leader. And every time you sort of click and look at where Kingsbury is in all these conversations, he just looks like a deer in the headlights, completely lost as to what's happening. It looks like he's at the IMAX watching a movie and not really an active participant. So I think all their problems really begin with Kingsbury. I don't think they end with him, but they certainly begin with him.
I'd be curious with Jamal. I'll have to. I have a buddy, Josh Weinfuss, is the Cardinals beat writer for ESPN down in Arizona. So I'm just making this up. I'll have to ask him afterwards, and maybe we can share some information. But I'd be curious how hot his seat is, Cliff Kingsbury, that is, because you look at their staff. Vance Joseph, their defensive coordinator, obviously did not have a great first go around as a head coach with the Denver Broncos, but was considered a very bright mind, a great leader that just, got dealt kind of a rough hand, and a lot of coaches fail their first stint. And I've heard talks that he's kind of climbed the ranks again, potentially to get some interviews in the future, has done enough defensively and in that locker room to maybe warrant a consideration. I'd be curious if the Cardinals front office, if they lose this game and maybe one more, say, all right, this clearly isn't going to work with Cliff. Why not move on? We'll let Vance be the interim head coach the rest of the year, and he kind of gets another shot to enhance his resume, whether it be with the Cardinals or with another organization. So I'm curious if that's something that could come to play there down in the desert.
I think so, and I think it should. I don't know if it will, but here's the other piece of it, Ryan, is it seems that Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are sort of attached at the hip. There's obviously a school of thought out there, even when he was drafted and up until this point, that his body type, even though he's a very dynamic runner and can do all of these sort of spectacular things from time to time, but down over down, season over season, his body type and his style of play isn't really conducive to winning NFL football games consistently. And the reason they drafted Kyler Murray was because it was meant to be this seamless transition for Kingsbury, because they were both Big 12 guys, both air raid kind of guys. Kyler Murray was, coached by USC coach Lincoln Riley, all from that air raid tree under Mike Leach. And so that was sort of the idea, that even though Kingsbury doesn't have NFL experience, let's try and replicate the Sean McVay model, if you will, in Arizona with this hot, young, new offensive mind, and let's make him as comfortable as possible. And so I think you probably want a sample size of 6, 7, 8 games with a different coach to see if he can get through to Kyler Murray in a different way, or if it unlocks something different in Kyler Murray. Otherwise, I think you need to sort of move on from him as your quarterback, even though you've given him a lot of money, and that's going to open up Pandora's box there, but that was probably a mistake.
Yeah. I think we'll see. We'll see what happens. It'll be interesting. But let's get into the preview of the game. Before we do, this show, the LA Football Show, the LA Football Network, is brought to you by our friends at Liquid Death. If you've been seeing the tall cans of what looks like beer or energy drinks in the water aisle at 7-Eleven, at Ralph's, wherever you go, it's not beer. It's not energy drink. It is mountain spring water, fresh from the Alps. It's called Liquid Death because it will murder your thirst, and they are doing everything in their power to kill plastic bottle pollution. They're doing that by donating a percentage of every single can sold. Liquid Death is great. I love it. It looks cool. I feel cool. Something about drinking water out of a can is just more enjoyable and thirst quenching. So head to your local Ralph's, Albertsons, Vons, Whole Foods, 7-Eleven, wherever you get your convenience items to pick up Liquid Death, or use our search tool, liquiddeath.com/LAFB, to find the nearest location to you. Tell him or them, the guys at the LA Football Network, sent you. So, Jamal, looking at this game, we don't have to get too much about the defense because the defense overall has been very good. I know everyone cries about the soft zone. I know it was very poor timing in that last game. I get it. They did end up losing that game on that kind of soft off coverage, but overall, this defense has played very, very well. Raheem Morris, I've said last year, I'll say it again, will be a head coach before he's a fired coach. That is why the Rams will lose him, is because he's hired by someone else. The offense is the issue of this team. The offense cannot move the ball. The offense cannot score points outside of any broken plays that Cooper Kupp gets loose. That is the extent of what their offense has been. Now, luckily, they're going up against a defense that hasn't been able to stop a whole lot of anybody. So this hopefully is a game the Rams can at least put up 20 points. What are you looking for from this Rams team or this Rams offense this week, Jamal?
Ryan, this is such a hard game to predict because of the state of Matthew Stafford's health and having not been in practice the last 2 days in concussion protocol. They weren't happy with answers to questions that he gave earlier in the week. So if you don't have Stafford, you're going to turn to the Wolf of Inglewood. And, John W. came up with a great win week 17 of 2020 against these very Cardinals at SoFi. Similar situation here, Cardinals at SoFi. So, what do you do here? Maybe that's sort of the jolt that this offense needs a little bit. You need maybe a little bit more of a mobile quarterback back there to sort of evade the pass rush and turn it into more of a sandlot game where defensive principles break down and it becomes kind of a game of instinct. And does that sort of unlock a little bit of explosiveness in this offense where then they can play the run off of that and do all kinds of variations off of that? So I think it's hard to even anticipate what's going to happen when you don't even know who the quarterback is going to be. And because those two quarterbacks are so different in terms of their skill set. But I actually think there may be an opportunity for the Wolf to unlock something in this offense. And I think even if Stafford is 50-50, I'd bench him this week and just try something here. Make sure Stafford gets 100% healthy and just try and put the backup in there and see what you can get and see what sort of unlocks the playbook. Because on the other side too, Ryan, the Cardinals are just as banged up. I think there's a lot of question of whether or not Kyler Murray's going to play in this game. So this is really a tough one to pick when neither starting quarterback we know the health of.
Yeah, I purposely hadn't mentioned anything yet because obviously that is the biggest story of this game. The fact that Matthew Stafford has been now in the concussion protocol. I believe he was put in it on Tuesday, was reported. It didn't come out till Wednesday, but we found out that it was actually put in the protocol on Tuesday. Knowing that, I would think it's very unlikely he plays in this game. Knowing his age, knowing his family, his wife has come out publicly and said she's terrified, like concussions and head trauma is something that you do not want to deal with and not want to risk anything. So I don't think there's any way, unless something crazy happens, Stafford plays in this game. I'm really curious what got him in the protocol. Was it a practice thing? Was it an off the field thing? Was it in the game on Sunday that we just didn't know about until now? So I'm curious about that. And if we find anything out, obviously we'll let you guys know. Now looking at the game, and here's what's interesting, Jamal. Obviously John Wolford's the backup. I don't even know if it's 100% that it would be Wolford. I mean, we may see Bryce Perkins start the game after what he's done and why they've kept him on this roster, which is so weird to say because why wouldn't he be the backup in? But I just don't know. I mean, we don't know what Sean McVay is going to do this year because he doesn't do anything we think he should do. But regardless of that, Jamal, and Matthew Stafford is the starting quarterback for this team. He is the best quarterback on this roster. He gives his team the best chance to win. But in this instance, this may be what Sean McVay needs to happen, because I'm going to say it again, and everyone can turn the radio off because they're probably sick of hearing it, but this will force Sean McVay to commit to the running game. Because I don't care how much he loves John Wolford or Bryce Perkins, you're not throwing the ball 35, 40 times with the Wolf of Inglewood. You're not doing it. You got to run the football with them. And maybe you run the football with John Wolford. Maybe you're using these RPOs and getting him out of the pocket and having some escapability, which I know all of a sudden, if that happens, there'll be a QB controversy among Rams Twitter. But I think this is a good opportunity of McVay to get back to what he needs to do, because he got, in my opinion, too comfortable knowing the arm talent of Stafford to just say, let's just drop back 45 times and let Stafford go win us a game. And now he's going to have to actually schematically improve. He's going to have to get back to his prowess of play design and really utilize the talent that's there, because it's the lesser talent that he's had in recent games, recent weeks, recent years. So in my opinion, number one, Stafford's health is most important. But because of who they're playing, I think this is actually good for this Rams team, because it'll force McVay to get back to the way he used to call games.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's why I was sort of leaning that this is a really good thing. Obviously, you don't want any long-term effects for Stafford. You want him to be 100% healthy and happy. But just for this week, for this game, it's a good idea to have either one of these two backups. And you nailed everything on the head, Ryan. I won't repeat it. But what it gives me some deja vu, our conversation right now, because you and I spent so much time over the summer, if you recall, talking about Wolford and Perkins
Yeah.
and why Perkins wasn't really getting a chance to win that backup job in preseason because he played so well, and how McVay just sort of gave it to John W. as the incumbent. And now here we are in live NFL action, week 10, game 9, where this quarterback controversy is revealing itself again from a backup perspective. So I agree with you. I'm not sure Wolford is the right choice. I think Perkins could really be very effective here, because it also adds the other element that you have a running quarterback. So you can run with your quarterback. You can run with your traditional running backs. You can do the wide receiver jet sweeps. You can run in a much more variety of ways here, a lot more different dimensions than you could with just a traditional pocket passer. So hopefully this is the week. They always say necessity is the mother of invention. Let's hope this is now the mother of Sean McVay's invention, where he finally goes back and commits to that running game.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm excited to see how he rises to the challenge. We've talked about how McVay almost, even he seems like writer's block, or is just kind of going through the motions, or doesn't seem like himself. Well, this is an opportunity now for him to get in the lab and have some fun again and get creative with it, and kind of be like, if we win this game, yeah, the players play, but it's going to be because of me that we win this game, because I'm going to draw up some things and have some fun with it and get back to the way that I used to call games last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So we got about 60 seconds, Jamal, for these predictions. Who do you got and why?
Ryan, I think that again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think this is going to open up just a breath of fresh air for this team a little bit. Sometimes when you're losing, when you haven't played well, look, technically the Rams have lost 2 games in a row. Non-technically, they've lost 8 games in a row in my mind. They haven't put a whole game together yet this season that I would consider sort of a credible defending champion type of game. So sometimes you need to just change it up personnel-wise, roster-wise. I think there's going to be a surprise. I think Perkins is going to be the starter. I think they're going to run 30-plus times. I think there's going to be some very clever QB runs, QB draws, counters with the running back. And I think it's going to get this crowd excited, and it's going to be just enough. Rams are going to win 23-20, and all will be well, at least for 1 week.
I love it. I do think the Rams win as well. Sean McVay is 11-1 against the Cardinals since he was hired. Last time they played in week 4, they did not allow a touchdown, gave up 4 field goals to the tune of 12 points. I think this Rams offense kind of gets going just because of the differences, because they're forced to run the football and commit to it. And I think they're going to put up 30, and we're going to all of a sudden have a QB controversy, which is going to be silly next week. But just because of that, we will. And I think the Rams win 30-14 and get back on track. So I think they come out big and get to 4-5. So we shall see. Can't wait for it. Sunday, our newest show, the Tailgate Takeover with Paula and Brittany, will be at the tailgate at SoFi. Make sure to look for them. Look for the LAFB shirts. We have giveaways, all that fun stuff. This is the LA Football Show. For Jamal Madney, I am Ryan Dyer. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a blessed weekend, and we'll talk to everyone next week.